Hey guys, my name is Yasmina and welcome back to my channel. Today we're in a little bit of a different setting. This is just another corner of my room, but I just wanted to film in here because, I don't know, it felt a little cozy. So today's video, since we are in the back to school month of September, I figured I should make a video about my favorite books that are set in a boarding school. So I think I'm not alone in really liking the idea of a boarding school, especially growing up and, watching Harry Potter, reading Harry Potter and other sort of media where students lived in the school and lived with each other. That just always seemed fun. I know the reality is probably completely different, but anyway, it's fiction. We can imagine and enjoy ourselves. So these are my book recommendations featuring boarding schools, and these are in a bunch of different genres, but the majority are fantasy, but there's some other genres as well. So let's get into the book recommendations. First up is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a book that I've read years and years ago, and to be honest, I don't remember much about it. I don't think I've ever really talked about it on this channel, but this is kind of a paranormal YA fantasy, and from what I remember, this takes place at a private school, or at least the Raven Boys are in a private school, and that is of course a boarding school as well. And the main character is a girl, and she's trying to find out the secrets of these Raven Boys. But I remember really enjoying this, and it's been a while since I really thought about this book, but I remembered it for this video, and I maybe should give it a read, or I should actually continue with the series, because this is a series, I think, of 4 books in total, so I should probably continue on. But yes, this is the first one. Then I have 2 contemporary novels. The first one is Looking for Alaska by John Green. I think this was the first John Green book I ever read back in the day when I was myself in high school, and this takes place at also a private school, a boarding school, and our main character is in love with this girl called Alaska, and Alaska disappears from this private school, and so it's up to our main character to figure out what happened to his friend. I remember this being quite a sad, tragic story, but it's just as deep and thought-provoking. Just a little more on the very, very sad side. Then it's Love Boat Taipei by Abigail Hing Wen, and this takes place at a summer boarding school, kind of like a summer project, and our main character flies over to Taipei, Taiwan for this summer school program, and it's essentially a massive party. It's supposed to be like this really serious study program, but it ends up being this massive party, and our main character sort of discovers herself during the summer and also comes to terms with their relationship towards her parents and also towards her own identity and culture. And I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun and also quite a bit steamy for a YA contemporary, so I would highly recommend this. Then I have one of my favorite books of all time. This is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is adult thriller, mystery, literary fiction. It's that kind of book. I'm sure you've heard of it before, but this takes place at university, and our main character is very intrigued by this exclusive group of philosophy students and their teacher, and is kind of trying to get inside that exclusive club himself and see what all the fuss is about. Because this group of students has a kind of celebrity status inside this university. And so our main character is very curious to find out why. And boy, does he. He really does. Generally, this is one of my favorite books. I really thought the writing was so atmospheric and beautiful and haunting. And also the story itself is really interesting. The characters are extremely flawed, but really interesting to read about. So I would highly recommend this. Another mystery thriller, but this time YA. This is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. Our main character moves to a new school, a boarding school, and this school has a very dark past where a lot of murders happened and no one really figured out what really went on. And Stevie, our main character, is a budding detective, and she is all about trying to figure out the dark pasts of this school. Really good. I highly enjoyed this. Also really beautiful writing and great anxiety representation. Back to fantasy, we have, of course, The Magician's Trilogy by Liv Grossman. I can show you the whole trilogy. It's The Magicians, The Magician King, and The Magician's Land. I almost forgot the title of the last book there for a second. Anyway, this is one of my favorite fantasy series of all time, and our main character goes to Magic University. And then just like in Harry Potter, it's a boarding school type of situation, and also kind of similar to The Secret History in some way, because there's a lot of dark and interesting and flawed characters in this. This is a very dark, definitely adult series, so just be aware of that. But it's really good, and yeah, the majority of it takes place at a boarding school, so highly recommend. Another dark university setting. This is Give the Dark My Love by Beth Revis. This is a YA fantasy. Our main character goes to a magic university to study medicinal alchemy because there is a disease that is spreading across this fantasy world that is slowly eating the population. This hits a bit too close to home, but anyway, it's essentially something close to the plague. Again, it's very close to home. And our main character really wants to make an impact towards this disease and fight this disease, and so she goes to study medicinal alchemy. But again, there's a lot of dark history regarding the school, and our main character stumbles into a very dark path indeed towards fighting this disease. It's also a duology. There's only 2 books. The second is called Bid My Soul Farewell. So it's also quite a quick little duology to get through if you wanted something like that. Now I do have to mention my favorite book of all time in this video as well, and that is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the first book in the epic Kingkiller Chronicle series, of which there are still only 2 books out. Anyway, this takes place also at a boarding school university, and I don't really know how to speak about this series because it is my favorite and it's so incredibly complex that I just feel like whenever I do try to explain something about this book, I never do it proper justice. So, you know, if you haven't read the Kingkiller Chronicles, do yourself a massive favor and pick up this beautiful book. But yeah, boarding school, magic boarding school. The best kind of boarding school, right? Speaking of more magic boarding schools, I actually have 3 middle grade-ish books. The first one is The Novice by Taran Matharu. This is the first book in the Summoner series, and this is more of a middle grade / YA. It's kind of somewhere in between, or the sort of lower end of YA, I would say, but I think middle grade readers would also be able to enjoy and access this, so that's why it's kind of somewhere in the middle. I like to say that this is kind of a magical Pokemon type of situation, because in this world the magic revolves around these demons that these summoners retrieve from a different world, and they become sort of like companions / weapons, so they kind of fight with these little demon pets. Our main character goes to school to learn all about being a summoner and how to harness his new abilities, and it very much reminded me of Harry Potter, like I said, with Pokemon. So a Harry Potter mixed with Pokemon, really good combination in my opinion. Then I have the Magisterium series. This is the first book, The Iron Trial by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare. This is also kind of a middle grade Harry Potter / Percy Jackson / that sort of thing. Again, we follow this trio of characters, 2 boys and a girl, very similar to Harry Potter, but this definitely was super enjoyable, and it definitely had a lot of twists and turns that kind of turn the tropes of this type of story. I would say definitely surprised me, and it was just really enjoyable in general to read. And of course there's a lot of magic involved, but I don't really want to say too much because it's quite a short book. I really enjoyed it. Of course, it takes place at a boarding school deep down in caves. And then another middle grade, I have School for Good and Evil by Soman Jainani. This follows 2 girls who are supposed to go to the School for Princesses and the School for Witches, but they get switched. So the girl who would technically, be the princess type goes to the School for Witches and vice versa, and it's a whole chaotic mess. It was definitely enjoyable, and yeah, it's a start of also quite a long series. Then I have A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. This is also kind of a thriller mystery because, as the name suggests, This is a take on Sherlock Holmes, but if Sherlock Holmes was a really weird girl at this private school and our main character was a very awkward Watson, so basically a young Watson, and they try to solve a murder together. And I had a bit of qualms with this book. I didn't think it was executed as well as it could have been, but I still think the concept was quite cool. And again, it takes place at a boarding school and you might enjoy it more than I did. So I put it in this video. Can I have another fantasy series? This is the Wayward Children's series. It's a series of fantasy novellas. So the first book is called Every Heart a Doorway by Sean McGuire, and there are 5 books out, or 6. I'm not sure if the 6th one is actually already out, but I have the first 5 at least, and I have read all of them. And this takes place at a boarding school. It's kind of an orphanage for kids who fall into magical worlds and then somehow find their way back to the real world, and they cannot really cope with the real world anymore. And so there's this school/orphanage where they gather after that. And there's a lot that happens in this series. Some books take place exclusively in these portal fantasy worlds, and some take place at the school/orphanage. So there's a little bit of everything, but I would highly recommend giving it a try, at least the first book, because they're also very short. So you can just find out if you like it or not. And the last recommendation I don't have physically, but it is the Gemma Doyle series. I read this years and years ago, but I remember I actually really enjoyed it. I'm not sure why I got rid of the books, but anyway, this is about a finishing school. It's kind of a historical fantasy, and our main character goes to a finishing school that is a bit paranormal in nature, I would say. And of course it's a boarding school type of situation, but I remember really enjoying this. I should maybe pick this up again and remember more about it, because I unfortunately can't really say much more than that. Oh, and actually another recommendation would of course be Percy Jackson, the Percy Jackson series, which also takes place at it's more of a camp type situation, but they do stay there, and live with the other students and everything like that. And of course, I'm sure you all know about the Percy Jackson series. I've read the first 3 books a while ago, and they're enjoyable enough, so definitely recommend that if you haven't tried it yet. And obviously, I'm not going to recommend Harry Potter to you, because I assume like me that you're watching these types of videos because you liked everything about Harry Potter and the fact that it's set in a boarding school. So I'm not going to mention the obvious Harry Potter series, but I mean, if you haven't read it, pick up a used copy of it and read it. But yeah, those are all the books that I've personally read and enjoyed that take place at a boarding school. There's a lot and not a lot at the same time. I feel like there should be more books. Now, I'm sure there are books, more books than the ones I've shown you in this video. I just haven't come across them yet, or I haven't read them yet. I'm sure there are some, on my physical TBR, but I just have not read them yet. So if you have any more recommendations that I haven't mentioned myself in this video, do leave them in the comment section below for other people to find, and also for me, because I would also like to read more books set at a boarding school, because I just think it's fun. It's just a fun concept. So that was it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time with a new video. Bye. Plant says bye as well. I don't even know if you can see this plant well, but